Taiho had always believed he was ordinary. He woke up every morning at 6, took the subway to work, and spent his days translating documents that nobody important would ever read. He was 29 years old, unmarried, and lived in a small apartment in Seoul with a cat named Bori. His mother called him twice a week to ask when he would find a wife. His younger brother sent him funny videos. His life was simple and unremarkable, and Taiho was perfectly fine with that. He worked at the United Earth Embassy as a junior translator. It was not a glamorous job. While the senior diplomats met with world leaders and made history, Taiho sat in a basement office and translated shipping agreements from Chinese to Korean. Sometimes he translated meeting notes. Once, he translated a birthday card for an ambassador's daughter. That was the most exciting thing that had happened to him in 3 years. When the alien ships appeared in Earth's sky, Taiho watched the news like everyone else. He saw the massive vessels blocking out the sun over major cities. He heard the world leaders make their speeches about unity and hope. He watched the panic in the streets and the military jets that looked like insects next to the alien warships. And he went to work the next day because nobody told him not to. The Valiant Empire had conquered 1,000 worlds. Their fleet had crossed the galaxy, crushing every civilization that stood in their way. Now they had come to Earth, and humanity had 2 choices: surrender or die. The world leaders chose to talk first. The summit was held in Seoul. Taiho did not know why they chose his city. Perhaps it did not matter. The aliens had demanded a meeting, and the humans had agreed. Every important person on Earth gathered in the grand conference hall downtown. Presidents, prime ministers, generals, scientists. The best humanity had to offer. Taiho was there too, but only because someone needed to carry the translation equipment. He stood in the back of the room with the other assistants, watching the empty stage and feeling his heart beat too fast. In 30 minutes, the first alien to ever set foot on Earth would walk through those doors. He never got to see it happen. The explosion came without warning. One moment, Taiho was adjusting his earpiece. The next moment, he was flying through the air. He hit something hard, and the world went dark. When he opened his eyes, everything was different. The grand hall was destroyed. The ceiling had collapsed. Fires burned everywhere. Taiho pushed himself up on shaking arms and looked around. He saw bodies. He saw blood. He saw the broken remains of chairs and tables and dreams. He was alive. He did not know how or why, but he was alive. Taiho stumbled through the ruins, calling out for survivors. His voice sounded strange in his own ears. Dust filled his lungs. His left arm was bleeding, but he could not feel the pain. He was in shock. He knew this. He had read about shock once in a book about emergencies. Stay calm, the book had said. Keep moving. He found no one alive. The terrorist attack had killed everyone. The presidents, the prime ministers, the generals. The entire diplomatic team. The hope of humanity, gone in a single blast. Taiho stood alone in the wreckage and felt the weight of that truth crush him like a physical force. Then he heard the footsteps. They came from outside, heavy and rhythmic. Many feet, moving in perfect unison. Taiho turned toward the broken entrance of the hall, his heart stopping in his chest. Through the smoke and dust, he saw them coming. The Velian soldiers were 7 feet tall. Their skin was silver, their eyes were black, and they wore armor that seemed to absorb the light. They moved like predators, scanning the ruins with weapons raised. Behind them came more soldiers, and more after that. An entire army marching into the destroyed building. Taiho should have run. He should have hidden. But his legs would not move. He stood frozen in place, covered in dust and blood, as the alien army surrounded him. The soldiers stopped. They looked at him with those dark eyes, and Taiho felt something strange. A pressure in his mind. like someone was pushing against a door inside his head. The pressure grew stronger, then suddenly stopped. The soldiers looked at each other. They seemed confused. One of them spoke into a device on his wrist. Taiho did not understand the words, but he understood the tone. Something unexpected had happened. They waited. Minutes passed like hours. Taiho stood in the center of the alien soldiers, afraid to breathe, afraid to move. His arm was still bleeding. His legs were shaking. He thought about his mother and his brother and his cat. He thought about all the things he would never do. Then the soldiers stepped aside, creating a path through their ranks. Taiho looked up and saw her. The Empress of the Velian Empire walked into the room. She was taller than her soldiers. Her silver skin seemed to glow with inner light. Her eyes were not black like theirs, but gold like dying stars. She wore a crown of twisted metal that floated above her head without touching it. Her presence filled the room like a physical weight, pressing down on everything around her. Taiho had never seen anything so beautiful or so terrifying in his entire life. The Empress stopped in front of him. She looked down at him with those golden eyes, studying him like a scientist studying an insect. Taiho opened his mouth to speak, to beg, to say anything at all, but no words came out. The Empress raised her hand. Every soldier in the room dropped to one knee, their heads bowed. The movement was instant and perfect, like a single organism responding to a command. Then the Empress lowered herself. She knelt before Taiho. Her knees touched the ground. Her head bowed. The most powerful being in the known galaxy knelt before a junior translator covered in dust and blood. The silence that followed was the loudest thing Taiho had ever heard. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The soldiers stared at their Empress with wide eyes and open mouths. Some of them looked angry. Some of them looked afraid. One of them, a larger soldier with scars across his silver face, looked at Taiho with pure hatred. Taiho did not understand. He could not understand. His mind was empty, blank, unable to process what was happening. He was nobody. He was nothing. He was just a translator who carried equipment and lived alone with a cat. Why was the Empress kneeling before him? The Empress raised her head and looked at Taiho. When she spoke, her voice was like music, strange and beautiful. And somehow, impossibly, Taiho understood every word. "I have searched the stars for 10,000 years," she said. "And finally, I have found you." Taiho stared at her. His voice, when it came, was barely a whisper. "I think you have the wrong person." The Empress smiled. It was not a human smile. There was too much knowledge in it, too much weight. "No," she said. "I do not." She rose to her feet and held out her hand. "Come with me, child of the silent world. Your destiny awaits." Taiho looked at her hand. He looked at the soldiers. He looked at the ruins around him, at the bodies of everyone who should have been standing in his place. He had no choice. He took her hand. The Valiant ship was larger than any building Taiho had ever seen. It hung in the sky above Seoul like a second moon, dark and massive and impossible. When the Empress led him to the transport vessel, he looked back at his city one last time. The fires were still burning. The smoke rose into the sky. Somewhere down there, people were crying and screaming and dying. And Taiho was leaving them behind. He wanted to say something. He wanted to ask questions. But the Empress walked ahead of him in silence, and her soldiers surrounded him like a cage. So Taiho followed, his legs moving on their own, his mind still trying to understand what had happened. The inside of the ship was cold and strange. The walls seemed to be made of living metal that shifted and flowed like water. The lights had no source, glowing from everywhere and nowhere at once. Taiho felt like he had stepped into a dream, or a nightmare. He was not sure which. They brought him to a room. It was large, larger than his entire apartment, with a bed that could fit 10 people and windows that showed the stars. The soldiers left him there without a word. The door closed behind them, and Tai-Ho was alone. He sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the floor. His hands were shaking. His arm had stopped bleeding, but it still hurt. He thought about calling his mother, then realized he had no phone. He thought about escaping, then realized he was in space. He thought about crying, then decided he was too tired. He fell asleep without meaning to. When he woke up, there was a woman sitting in a chair across the room. Watching him, Tai-Ho jumped up, his heart pounding. The woman raised her hands in a peaceful gesture. She was human. That was the first thing he noticed. She had black hair and brown eyes and a face that reminded him of home. She was older than him, maybe 40, with lines around her eyes and gray in her hair. "Do not be afraid," she said in Korean. "I am not here to hurt you." Tai-Ho stared at her. "Who are you?" "My name is Nari," she said. "I am a translator, like you. The Empress sent me to help you understand." "Understand what?" Tai-Ho asked. His voice sounded strange, too high and too fast. "I do not understand anything. Why am I here? Why did she kneel? What is happening?" Nari stood up and walked to the window. She looked out at the stars for a long moment before speaking. "I was taken from Earth 15 years ago," she said. "I was a university professor. I taught linguistics. One night, the Velians came to my city and took everyone they could find. Most of them died. I survived because I was useful." Tai-Ho felt cold. "Took them? Why?" "Research," Nari said simply. "The Velians wanted to understand us. Humans were a new species to them. They wanted to learn our languages, our culture, our biology." She paused. "And they wanted to understand why we were so strange." "Strange how?" Nari turned to face him. Her eyes were serious. "Every intelligent species in the galaxy has what the Velians call a psionic signature," she said. "It is like a mental fingerprint. When two Velians meet, they can sense each other's thoughts, their emotions, their intentions. They cannot hide. They cannot lie. Their minds are open to each other like books." Tai-Ho listened, trying to understand. "Every species has this ability," Nari continued. "The Velians, the species they have conquered, even the ancient races that came before. Everyone can hear the mental song of the universe." She paused. "Everyone except us? Except humans?" "Yes," Nari nodded. "Humans have no psionic signature. We are silent. When a Velian looks at us with their mind, they see nothing. They hear nothing. We are empty spaces in the universe, walking voids that make no sound." Tai-Ho thought about the pressure he had felt in the ruins, the pushing against his mind that had suddenly stopped. Now he understood. "They tried to read my mind," he said. "And they could not." "Yes," Nari said. "And that is why the Empress knelt before you." She walked to a table and picked up a book. It was old, very old, with pages that looked like they might crumble to dust. The writing inside was not any language Tai-Ho had ever seen. "This is a text from the Firstborn," Nari said. "They were an ancient race, the oldest in the galaxy. They died millions of years ago, but they left behind prophecies. The Velians worshipped these prophecies like holy scriptures." She opened the book and pointed to a page. "One prophecy speaks of the unmarked ones," she said. "A species from a forgotten world at the edge of the galaxy. They would have no voice in the psionic web. They would be invisible to the minds of others, and their words would carry the weight of pure truth because they could not be influenced, controlled, or deceived." Tai-Ho felt dizzy. "And they think we are these unmarked ones?" "Not think," Nari said. "They know. They have searched for millions of years. They have conquered 1,000 worlds looking for the silent species. And now they have found us. She closed the book. They have found you. But I am nobody, Taiho said. I am just a translator. I carry equipment. I translate shipping documents. I am not special, Nari smiled, but it was a sad smile. To them, every human is special, she said. But you are the first to stand before the Empress. You are the first unmarked one she has ever met. In her eyes you are sacred. Taiho sat back down on the bed. His head was spinning. This was too much. Too fast. Too impossible. What does she want from me? He asked. I do not know, Nari admitted. Perhaps she wants guidance. Perhaps she wants wisdom. Perhaps she just wants to believe that the prophecy is true. She paused. But I must warn you, not everyone in the Empire believes as the Empress does. What do you mean? Nari looked toward the door, as if checking that no one was listening. There is a general named Corvith, she said quietly. He is the Empress's most trusted commander. He has won 100 battles for her. But he does not believe in the prophecy. He thinks humans are just animals. Mistakes of evolution. He believes we have no psionic signature because we are too primitive to have developed one. And what will he do? Taiho asked. I do not know, Nari said. But I know he is watching. And I know he is not pleased. Before Taiho could respond, the door opened. A Velian soldier stepped inside. He was tall and scarred, the same one who had looked at Taiho with hatred in the ruins. His eyes were cold as he looked at the two humans. The Empress summons you, he said to Taiho. Come. Taiho looked at Nari. She gave him a small nod. Be careful, she whispered. And whatever you do not show fear. They can feel it, even if they cannot read your mind. Taiho stood up. His legs were still shaking, but he made himself walk forward. He followed the soldier out of the room and into the corridor, heading toward whatever destiny awaited him behind him. Nari watched him go with worry in her eyes. She had seen what happened to humans who caught the attention of powerful Velians. It rarely ended well, but perhaps, she thought, perhaps this one would be different. Perhaps this ordinary man from Earth would change everything. Or perhaps he would die like all the others. Only time would tell. 3 weeks passed on the Velian flagship. Taiho learned many things in those weeks. He learned how to eat Velian food without getting sick. He learned how to walk in the low gravity of certain sections of the ship. He learned the names of the servants who brought him his meals and the guards who stood outside his door. He even learned a few words of the Velian language, though his pronunciation made Nari laugh. But he did not learn why the Empress had brought him here. She summoned him sometimes. They would sit in her private chambers, and she would ask him questions about Earth. What did humans eat? How did they build their cities? What did they believe about death? Taiho answered as best he could, always feeling like he was failing some test he did not understand. The Empress never explained her intentions. She only watched him with those golden eyes, studying him like he was a puzzle she could not solve. You are truly silent, she said one evening. I reach for your mind and find nothing. It is like reaching into water and finding only more water. No bottom, no surface. Just endless depth. Taiho did not know what to say to that, so he said nothing. The Empress smiled her strange smile. Even your silence speaks, she said. How fascinating. On the 23rd day, everything changed. Taiho was eating breakfast in his room when the door burst open. General Corvith stood in the doorway, his silver face twisted with cold fury. Behind him were a dozen soldiers, their weapons raised. You will come with me, Corvith said. Now, Taiho looked at the weapons. He looked at the general's eyes. He saw death in those eyes, waiting for an excuse. Yes, he said quietly. Of course. They marched him through the ship. Servants stopped to stare. Soldiers whispered to each other. Taiho felt their eyes on him, felt the weight of their attention. He was no longer a curiosity. He was something else now, something dangerous. They brought him to a vast chamber at the heart of the ship. It was a courtroom, Taiho realized. Hundreds of Velians sat in rising rows of seats, their faces cold and stern. At the front of the room was a raised platform where the Empress sat on a throne of black marble. She did not look at Taiho as he was pushed forward. Her face was empty, expressionless. General Corvith strode to the center of the chamber and raised his voice. "For 3 weeks, this creature has lived among us," he said. "The Empress calls it sacred. She says it is the unmarked one of prophecy. She says we should bow before it and worship it like a god." His voice dripped with disgust. "I say it is a lie." The chamber erupted in whispers. Taiho stood alone in the center of the floor, surrounded by aliens who wanted him dead. "This thing has no psionic signature because it is primitive," Corvith continued. "It is an animal, a beast that learned to walk and speak. The prophecy speaks of beings of great wisdom and power. This creature has neither." He turned to face the Empress directly. "I invoke the trial of truth." The whispers became gasps. Even the Empress reacted, her golden eyes widening slightly. Taiho did not understand what was happening, but he knew it was bad. Nar. I had explained the trial of truth to him once. It was an ancient ritual used to determine guilt or innocence in the most serious cases. The accused would be subjected to deep psionic probing. Their entire mind lay bare before the judges. Every thought, every memory, every secret would be exposed. There was no hiding, no lying, no escape. For a Velian, it was humiliating but survivable. For Taiho, it was impossible. "It cannot be probed," Nari had told him. "If they try, they will find nothing. And then they will have to decide what that means." "The trial is invoked," the Empress said. Her voice was calm, but Taiho could see tension in her shoulders. "The law is clear. The accused must submit to deep probing. And if he cannot be probed?" Someone in the audience asked. Corvith smiled. It was not a nice smile. "Then he is guilty," he said. "The trial of truth cannot be refused. If this creature is truly innocent, truly sacred, then he will find a way. If not..." He drew a finger across his throat. The chamber fell silent. All eyes turned to Taiho. He stood there, small and fragile and utterly human, and felt the weight of an empire pressing down on him. He could not pass this test. He could not prove his innocence in any way the Velians would accept. He was going to die unless he did something unexpected. Taiho remembered something his mother had told him when he was young. She had been talking about his father, who had died when Taiho was just a boy. "Your father was not a strong man," she had said. "He was not rich or famous or important. But when he spoke, people listened, because he always told the truth, even when it was hard, even when it cost him everything." Taiho looked at the Empress. He looked at Corvith. He looked at the hundreds of Velians who had already decided he was worthless. And then he opened his mouth. "I cannot be probed," he said. His voice was shaking, but he did not stop. "You all know this. My mind is silent to you. This is why the Empress believes I am sacred. This is why General Corvith believes I am an animal." He took a step forward. "But there is something you have forgotten. Something your psionic gifts have made you blind to." The chamber was absolutely still. "You can read minds," Taiho said. "You can feel thoughts and emotions and intentions. You have never needed to trust words alone. You have never needed to listen." He raised his head and looked directly at the Empress. "I cannot be probed, but I can speak, and I demand the right to be heard." A murmur ran through the crowd. Corvith's face twisted with anger. "This is absurd," he said. "Words mean nothing. Anyone can lie with words, can they?" Taiho asked. "How would you know? You have never had to tell truth from lies without your gifts. You have never had to listen to someone and decide if you believe them." He turned to face the entire chamber. "On my world, we do this every day. We cannot read minds. We can only listen and judge. We have become very good at it." He pointed at Corvith. "I know you want me dead. I can see it in your eyes, hear it in your voice. I do not need psionic powers to know this." He turned back to the Empress. "And I know you want to believe in the prophecy. You have spent 10,000 years searching for the Silent Ones. You are afraid that I am not what you hoped for." The Empress did not respond, but something flickered in her golden eyes. Taiho took a deep breath. "Let me speak to the High Council," he said. "Not through your mental communion. Through my voice and my words. If I am truly sacred, then my words should carry weight. If I am truly an animal, then my words will reveal me." He looked at the Empress one last time. "Give me this chance. Let me prove what I am through the only gift my kind possesses. Let me speak." The chamber held its breath. The Empress was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, she rose from her throne. "The human speaks wisely," she said. "His request is unprecedented, but so is his existence." She looked at Corvith, then at Taiho, then at the assembled Velians. "Tomorrow, the High Council will convene. And for the first time in our history, we will judge a being by his words alone." She sat back down. "This session is ended." The crowd began to murmur again. Corvith's face was dark with fury. But the decision was made. Taiho had bought himself one more day. Now, he just had to figure out what to say. The night before the High Council, Taiho did not sleep. He sat by the window in his room and watched the stars slowly spin past. Somewhere out there, impossibly far away, was Earth, his home, his mother, his brother, everything he had ever known. He might never see any of it again. Nari came to him as the ship's artificial dawn began to brighten the corridors. She brought food he could not eat and water he forced himself to drink. She sat with him in silence for a long time before speaking. "What will you say to them?" she asked. Taiho shook his head. "I do not know." "They will not be kind," Nari said. "The High Council is made of the oldest and most powerful minds in the Empire. They have judged millions. They have destroyed civilizations. They do not care about one small human. I know." "Then what will you do?" Taiho looked at her. In her eyes, he saw fear. Not for herself, but for him. She had survived 15 years among these aliens. She had seen what they could do. She knew how this story usually ended. "I will tell them the truth," Taiho said. "I do not know what else to do." Nari reached out and took his hand. Her fingers were warm and strong. "Then tell them a truth they cannot ignore," she said. "Make them listen." The council chamber was the largest room Taiho had ever seen. It was built like an ancient amphitheater, with hundreds of curved rows rising up toward a ceiling that seemed to touch the stars themselves. 300 Velians sat in those rows, their silver faces like masks, their golden and black eyes fixed on the small figure at the center of the floor. Taiho walked to the speaking platform alone. His footsteps echoed in the vast space. He could feel the pressure of 300 minds pushing against his silence, trying to break through, trying to understand what he was. The pressure was enormous, like being trapped at the bottom of an ocean, but it could not touch him. He was human. He was silent. And today, he would make them hear. The Empress sat at the highest point of the chamber, on a throne that seemed to float in the air. General Corvith stood beside her, his scarred face twisted with anticipation. He wanted Taiho to fail. He wanted to see this animal exposed and destroyed. An ancient Velian rose from the front row. His skin was darker than the others, almost gray, and his eyes were milky with age. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of centuries. "You have requested to address this council with words alone," he said. "This is without precedent. We do not judge by words. We judge by truth." "Then let my words be truth," Taiho replied. The Ancient One studied him for a long moment. Then he sat down and gestured for Taiho to continue. Taiho looked up at the 300 faces watching him. He thought about all the speeches he had translated in his years at the embassy. Grand words about peace and cooperation and the future of humanity. Empty words, most of them. Words that meant nothing. He could not afford empty words today. He took a deep breath and began. "I am not a prophet," he said. "I am not a god. I am not the savior your prophecy promised. I am just a man. A translator. A nobody." He saw Corvus smile. This was exactly what the general wanted to hear. "On my world, I had a small life," Taiho continued. "I woke up every morning and went to work. I translated documents. I ate lunch alone. I went home to my apartment and my cat. I called my mother twice a week. I watched videos with my brother. I was happy, in my small way." He paused. "Then your ships came, and everything changed." He looked directly at the council. "Your soldiers killed everyone at the summit. My leaders, my colleagues, my friends. They all died. I survived because I was standing in the wrong place, or perhaps the right place. I do not know. I only know that I was the one left standing when the Empress walked into the room. And she knelt before you," the Ancient One said. "Do you believe you deserve that honor?" "No," Taiho said honestly. "I do not." A murmur ran through the council. Corvus's smile grew wider. "I did not earn that honor," Taiho said. "I am not special. I am not wise or powerful or important. I am just human." He let that word hang in the air. "But perhaps that is enough." The murmur died. The council waited. "You think we are strange because we have no voice in your mental web," Taiho said. "You think we are broken or primitive or incomplete. But we do not see it that way." He thought of his mother. Her name was Yunji. She had raised 3 children alone after his father died. She had worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3. She had never complained, never given up, never stopped loving them even when everything was hard. "My mother taught me something when I was young," Taiho said. "She taught me that strength is not about power. It is about getting up when you fall down. It is about keeping going when everything tells you to stop." He thought of his brother. His name was Minho. He was 5 years younger than Taiho, still in university, still dreaming of the stars. He had sent Taiho a message the day the alien ships arrived. It said, "Do not be scared. We are humans. We have survived worse." "My brother believes in humanity," Taiho said. "He believes that we are capable of great things. Not because we are powerful, but because we refuse to give up." He looked at the Empress. "You have conquered 1,000 worlds. You have crushed civilizations that had existed for millions of years. You are the most powerful empire in the galaxy." He paused. "And you knelt before me." The council was absolutely silent. "You knelt because my mind is silent. Because you cannot rid me, cannot control me, cannot understand me. You knelt because, for the first time in your existence, you met something you could not conquer." Corvus's face had gone dark. "This is arrogance," he said. "This creature compares itself to the Empire." "No," Taiho said. "I am not comparing. I am explaining." He turned to face the entire council. "You fear us. That is the truth. You fear what you cannot read. You fear what you cannot control. You found us at the edge of the galaxy, a small species on a small world, and you did not know what to do. He spread his arms. So you created a prophecy. You told yourselves that the Silent Ones were sacred, special, important. Because the alternative was too frightening. The alternative was that we were just like you, but without your greatest gift. You speak blasphemy, someone shouted from the upper rows. I speak the truth, Taiho replied. That is why you are afraid. He lowered his arms and looked at the council with steady eyes. I do not know if your prophecy is real. I do not know if I am the unmarked one you have been searching for. I am just a man who survived an attack and met an Empress. He took a step forward. But I can tell you this. Humans are not gods. We are not prophets. We are not sacred beings of pure truth. Another step. We are survivors. We have crawled out of the mud and built civilizations. We have destroyed ourselves and rebuilt again. We have faced extinction more times than we can count, and we are still here. He stopped at the edge of the speaking platform. You can kill me. You can destroy my world. But you cannot make us disappear. Because we are human, and we never give up. The council was silent for a long moment. Then the Ancient One spoke. You have given us much to consider, he said. We will deliberate and render our judgment. Taiho bowed his head. He had said everything he could say. Now he could only wait. He turned to leave the speaking platform. Behind him, 300 Velians watched him go, and in the shadows at the edge of the chamber, General Corvith quietly drew his blade. Taiho did not see the blade until it was too late. One moment, he was walking away from the speaking platform. The next moment, General Corvith was charging toward the Empress, his weapon raised, his face twisted with fury. Everything happened at once. Soldiers shouted. Council members screamed. The ancient order of the chamber shattered into chaos. Corvith was not alone. Dozens of soldiers broke from their positions and attacked the Imperial Guard. It was a coup, a planned rebellion, hidden in the shadows, waiting for the right moment. And now it had begun. Taiho threw himself to the ground as energy weapons fired over his head. He crawled toward the nearest pillar, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might explode. This was not his fight. He was no warrior. He was a translator who had never held a weapon in his life, but he could not look away. Corvith reached the Empress. She raised her hand, and a wave of psionic energy threw him backward, but more soldiers came. They surrounded her, their blades flashing, their faces empty of mercy. The Imperial Guard fought to reach her, but they were outnumbered. One by one, they fell. Nari appeared beside Taiho, pulling him toward a side exit. We have to go, she said. Now, while they are distracted, what about the Empress? She is lost. Corvith has planned this for years. We cannot help her. Taiho looked at the battle. The Empress was fighting with everything she had, but she was surrounded. Blood ran down her silver face. Her crown had fallen to the ground, broken. She was going to die. He thought about his mother and his brother and his cat. He thought about Earth, far away and unreachable. He thought about going home, forgetting all of this, pretending it had never happened. He thought about what kind of person that would make him. No, he said. Nari stared at him. What? I will not run. Before she could stop him, Taiho stood up and started walking toward the battle. He did not know what he was doing. He had no plan, no weapon, no power. He was just a human, small and fragile and utterly outmatched. But he kept walking. A rebel soldier saw him and raised his blade. Nari appeared from nowhere, a stolen weapon in her hands, and struck the soldier down. She had not escaped. She had followed him. Foolish, she said. Absolutely foolish. But she stayed beside him. They pushed through the chaos, ducking blades and dodging energy beams. Taiho's ears rang with the sounds of battle. His lungs burned with smoke. He saw bodies on the ground, silver and red, and forced himself to keep moving. They reached the center of the chamber just as Corvith stood over the fallen Empress. Her guards were dead. Her power was spent. She looked up at the general with golden eyes that held no fear. "You think killing me will change anything?" she said. "Another will take my place. The Empire will continue." "The Empire will be purified," Corvus said. "We will destroy the humans and forget this madness about prophecies. We will return to our true destiny." He raised his blade, and Taiho stepped forward. "Stop." The word was not loud. It was not powerful. It was just one word, spoken by one small human in a room full of killers. But Corvus stopped. He turned to look at Taiho. His scarred face was covered in blood. His eyes were wild with battle rage. He should have struck Taiho down without a thought, but he hesitated, because Taiho's mind was silent. Corvus had fought 100 battles. He had killed thousands of enemies, and in every battle, he could feel his opponents. He could sense their fear, their anger, their intentions. He could predict their movements before they made them. His psionic gifts made him invincible, but he could not feel Taiho Dod when he looked at the human. He saw nothing. He heard nothing. There was no fear to exploit, no weakness to target. Taiho was a void, a silence, an emptiness that Corvith's senses could not penetrate. For the first time in his life, General Corvith faced an enemy he could not read. "What are you?" he whispered. Taiho did not answer immediately. He looked at the general, at the blade, at the fallen Empress behind him. He thought about everything that had brought him to this moment. The attack in Seoul, the ship, the prophecy. The Council died, and he understood something. The Velians had conquered 1,000 worlds because they could read minds. They knew what their enemies wanted, what they feared, what they would do. They were always one step ahead because they could see the future in the thoughts of others. But they could not see Taiho Dot, and in that blindness, they saw something else. They saw their own reflection, a mirror that showed them not the thoughts of others, but the truth of themselves. "I am human," Taiho said. "I am nothing more and nothing less." He took another step forward. "You hate me because you fear me. You fear me because you cannot understand me. And you cannot understand me because your gifts have made you blind." Corvith's hand trembled on his blade. "All your life, you have known what others think," Taiho said. "You have never had to wonder if someone was lying. You have never had to trust without certainty. You have never had to have faith." He stopped, close enough to touch the general's blade. "Look at me," he said. "Look at my silence, and ask yourself what you see." Corvith looked. His eyes searched Taiho's face, searching for something to read, something to understand. He found nothing, but in that nothing, he found something else. He found himself. He saw his own fear, his own weakness. He saw the general who had killed thousands and conquered worlds, and he saw the emptiness at the center of it all. He had spent his life reading others to avoid looking at himself. And now, facing a human he could not read, he had nowhere else to look. The blade fell from his hand. It clattered to the ground with a sound that echoed through the suddenly silent chamber. Corvith stood frozen, his face pale, his body shaking. He looked like a man who had seen his own death. Perhaps he had. Imperial reinforcements poured into the chamber. The rebel soldiers were surrounded, disarmed, taken away in chains. Medics rushed to the Empress and began treating her wounds. The battle was over. Corvith did not resist when they came for him. He walked away with empty eyes, a broken man. Taiho watched him go. He felt no satisfaction, no triumph. He only felt tired. I put a hand on his shoulder. "You did it," she said. "You stopped him with nothing but words." "Not words," Taiho said. "Silence." The Empress was carried to the medical bay. Taiho was told she would live. The council reconvened 3 days later, and they delivered their judgment. The human was not guilty. The prophecy was confirmed. Humanity would be protected. 1 month later, Taiho stood on the observation deck of Earth's first interstellar station. It had been built in just weeks, with valiant technology and human hands working together. Below him, Seoul was being rebuilt. The fires were gone. The rubble was cleared. Life was beginning again. Nari stood beside him, watching the stars. "They still do not understand us," she said. "They never will." "I know," Taiho said. "But they are listening now. That is enough." A valiant ship descended toward the station. The Empress was aboard, coming to finalize the treaty that would protect Earth. She had sent Taiho a letter the day before. It was handwritten in her own language, but Taiho had learned enough to read it. It said, "To the one who taught an empire that silence can speak louder than minds." "Thank you." Taiho folded the letter and put it in his pocket. He thought about his mother, who was waiting for him in Seoul. He thought about his brother, who had finally gotten his wish to see the stars. He thought about his cat, who probably did not care about any of this. He thought about all the things that had changed and all the things that had stayed the same. He was still just a translator. He still woke up every morning and did his job. He still called his mother twice a week. He was still ordinary, but perhaps ordinary was enough. Perhaps that was the whole point. The Empress's ship landed. Taiho straightened his clothes and walked toward the docking bay. He had a treaty to translate and an empire to speak to. Just another day of work. Nothing special at all.